a chroeso i'r trydydd sgwrs yn ein cyfres o sgyrsiau gyd-fynd efo arddangosfa Gwyl y Ferch 2022. Hello and welcome to the third talk to coincide with our exhibition for Gwyl y Ferch 2022. Dwi'n ddiolchgar iawn i chi am ymuno efo ni ac yn teimlo'n falch iawn o gallu cyflwyno chi i'r pobl sy'n sgwrsio hyn yma. Yn amlwg mae gennym ni Ffion Pritchard sydd yn un o trefnwyr Gwyl y Ferch, a mae gennym ni'r artistiaid Manon Parry, Renee, Simone a Wanda Garner. So just to say a warm welcome to you all and thank you all for joining us, and to introduce tonight's speakers, we've got Ffion Pritchard, one of the organisers of Gwyl y Ferch, and artists speaking tonight are Manon Parry, Renee, Simone and Wanda Garner. Sorry about that. So just to say, please do make yourself comfortable throughout the evening. Gwnewch yn siŵr fod chi'n gyfforddus trwy gydol y sgwrs. Ac os oes gennych chi unrhyw gwestiynau neu eisiau dweud rhywbeth, mae croeso chi wneud ar lafar ar ôl bob person siarad, neu gwneud o yn y chat. So just to say, please do make sure that you're comfortable and that you're happy throughout the talk. And if you do want to ask questions or make any statements throughout tonight's event, please do so out loud after everyone's talked or in the chat box. So just to say a quick thing, just in case anybody who doesn't know, and this is our third year doing Gwyl y Ferch with CARN, and we're very, very happy and pleased to be part of it again. And every year the work develops and it gets much stronger and it changes the dynamics each time as well, and we get to welcome different artists and regular artists every year, and it's something that we're very, very, very proud to be supportive of. Gwyl y Ferch gives an opportunity to those on the fringes as well as the ones that maybe don't get the opportunity and the platform otherwise. But I won't say too much. I'll let Ffion say a bit more. Diolch yn fawr.
Hi everyone, thank you Menna, diolch yn fawr Menna. So I'm Ffion, I'm one of the co-founders of Gwyl y Ferch. We started out in 2019, me and my friend Esme. And yeah, we've been going for 3 years now. Kind of can't believe it's been 3 years. At the same time, can't really believe it's only been 3 years. So we've been keeping busy. So yeah, nes I a Esme Livingston gychwyn Gwyl y Ferch yn 2019. Ac ie, da ni ar yn trydydd blwyddyn yn 7fed digwyddiad, dwi'n meddwl. Ac ie, mae wedi bod yn brysur ac yn hectic, ac bron methu coelio bod wedi bod yn 2 mlynedd, ond methu coelio bod ond wedi bod yn 2 mlynedd. So this year we've kind of diversified, like Menna said. We've had our first film night in a cinema in Pontio, which a couple of you have been part of, which was a really nice event on International Women's Day. We're also having our first kind of official poetry event. We've had an open mic and a poetry workshop in the past, but this is going to be a nice new edition. That's Sunday afternoon. And we've had the open exhibition in CARN that Esme and Menna curated, which is kind of the heart, the centre of our events every time, the open exhibition. Felly flwyddyn yma, da ni wedi hangu chydig, da ni wedi cael yn noson ffilm cyntaf mewn cinema, yn Cinema Pontio, ar diwrnod rhyngwladol y Merched, 8fed o Fawrth. Oedd chydig yna chi'n rhan o hwnna. Da ni hefyd yn mynd i cael yn digwyddiad barddoniaeth swyddogol cyntaf, Aid.This Sul, bydd gennym ni ddarlleniadau gan farddonwyr o'n cyfrol, yn trydydd cyfrol. Ac fel bob blwyddyn, mae gyd wedi angori yn yr arddangosfa agored gafodd ei gyradu gan Esme a Menna, sydd yn calon yr wyl ac yn beth da ni'n offshootio'n events eraill I gyd ohono fo. So it's been a nice busy one, quite hectic, a lot of work for all of us, but yeah, it's been good and rewarding. I feel like it's been a special year really. Felly yeah, mae'n di bod yn digwyddiad prysur, rewarding flwyddyn yma. Felly I'm going to share a really, really short video, just a 40-second trailer, what we're about, kind of our work so far. Felly dwi'n mynd I rannu fideo yn sydyn, 40 eiliad o trailer bach I Gwyl y Ferch. So yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you. And yeah, really nice to be here again. I've been learning a lot. Me and Esme have both been learning a lot about all of your practices through doing these talks. So I've really enjoyed them. Yeah, diolch yn fawr pawb. Ac mae'n bleser bod yma yn gwrando na chi'n siarad. Dwi a Esme wedi bod yn dysgu lot am ymarfer yr artistiaid i gyd da ni'n gweithio efo drwy wneud yr sgyrsiau yma. Felly, dyna ni gyda fi. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch Ffion, thank you Ffion. Mae'n rili neis bod y fyd yna bob tro, achos ti'n spotio beth gwahanol bob tro, fod y mond yn fyr, a gweld faint o waith da chi wedi gwneud o'r Gwyl y Ferch. Ac yn amlwg, mae'r elfen briliant na'n fod yn ddalliad o merched ar diwrnod y merch rhyngwladol, ond hefyd bod yr elfen da chi'n gwneud efo rhoi arian i elusennau a gweithio efo bobl sydd mewn cymunedau difreintiedig. Mae hynna'n briliant. A mae'n waith hynod o dda da chi'n gwneud. So just to say thank you to Ffion for showing that film, and I was just saying that every time I watch it, even though it's only a short clip, I spot something different, and it's mad how much work we've done as part of it. And as well as it being a celebration of women, and especially on International Women's Day, it's also a great thing that they do is working with groups that are more vulnerable in society and then raising money for charity. So just applauding their work in that sense. Anyhow, back to tonight. I'm going to introduce you to the first artist. Dwi'n gyflwyno chi'r artist cyntaf, sef Manon Parry. Mae gen Manon dan fideo, ond hefyd fatha installation yn efo, ond I'm deud gormod, ond enw fo di Pretend to Sleep. So just to introduce you to Manon, Manon's got a video piece with a bit of an installation in front of it in the exhibition. I won't say too much about it, but here's Manon to talk about Pretend to Sleep. Diolch, Manon.
Hiya, diolch, Menna. Okay, so I'll just share my screen then, if I can remember how to. Give me a sec. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so my practice is predominantly in film. So I create kind of like short films, mostly surrounding the idea of insomnia. I'm an insomnia myself, so I really struggle with kind of sleep. And I'm basically, a lot of it is sort of trying to depict that kind of feeling between being asleep and awake, where you're sort of almost like tapping into like insanity, or you feel like you're on the edge of that kind of insanity feeling. Yeah, so I normally create films with my own sort of filmed footage that I make, and then YouTube clips as well. And yeah, I think like the combination of the two sort of creates a new narrative and a new sort of stream of consciousness in a way. But yeah, so I've used some screenshots here. So this is from a video from a few years ago. And the top one is basically a film from YouTube and a combination of my own film as well. So you can see a kind of like a hand behind the YouTube clip there. And yeah, that was kind of like a comment on when you're sort of flicking through YouTube and you're in this sort of almost like black hole of like clips where you don't even know how you got there kind of thing. So that's another thing that I try and kind of visualize in a way. So obviously you can see it's kind of like a glacier that's sort of falling, which I think also, I often think about these kind of big things like climate change and global warming when I'm trying to sleep, or when I'm kind of in that stage of insomnia and it's sort of 4 o'clock in the morning and I still haven't gone to sleep. So yeah, so I'll just move to the next slide. Yeah, so this is a piece from a residency I did a few years ago. So I was kind of thinking about like recycling old work and like the use of, I suppose like what happens when you, I think we touched upon it last week as well, but what happens when you print off an online image and I suppose reuse it and redisplay it in a different way. So that's taken from a film, and I thought, I was also thinking about this idea of like, what is a moving image? So like, could it be like a sculpture? Could it be, because it kind of looks like the hand is sort of like holding on to the sort of railing or plinth type thing in a way. So I was kind of thinking about that idea, and yeah, I guess just like thinking about how to repurpose old work and how to continue the process of bringing it into real life and how that changes kind of when viewing the work as an audience as well. But yeah, so number 3. So again, this is like from the residency that I did as well. So I was thinking, so I did a lot of work with, yeah, what is a moving image and how do I challenge that? So on the right, you can kind of see the projection, and that's a kind of text that's been projected onto fabric. And then I use a fan to move the fabric. So it's kind of a way of almost like a moving image that isn't moving for you, or it's kind of moving in real life in a way. But yeah, so that's a text that I got from my mum that I basically projected onto the fabric, and it says, "Mae 'na pythefnos o gachu ci yn yr ardd," which means there's 2 weeks worth of dog shit in the garden. But yeah, so I think also a lot of my work is kind of commenting on social media and like online sort of presence as well and identity in a way.
Renee comes on. It's artist, I'm afraid.
But yeah, so that was kind of what I was playing at during that time, and this is all before the exhibition. And then so this is the next slide now. So this is the piece that I've shown in the festival. So it's again kind of thinking about this idea of between being awake and asleep. But it's almost, I think I was just really trying to like tap into that feeling of like sort of uncertainty and insanity, but without directly using as much YouTube clips. So more just kind of, maybe more so that feeling of like where you're kind of unsure what reality is in a way. So it's kind of dreamlike and has this feeling of just uncertainty and like you don't know where you are kind of thing. So I think that's another thing with sort of film, is you can edit it in a way where you're just really unsure sort of where it begins and ends, which I find interesting. But yeah, so I'm going to try and, so obviously, yeah, so like Menna said, this is an installation. So I printed part of the video onto fabric and then displayed it with the video playing in the background. And I think the installation itself is kind of supposed to be like a bed. So I think I used fabric because obviously it has that softness to it and it makes you think of sleep and bed and that environment. And then the video is kind of low down as well, so you feel like you're about to sort of go into bed to sleep sort of thing. But yeah, I'm going to try and play the video now, but I don't know if this is going to work. So it's only a minute long as well, so I shouldn't change the time. If you just stop there. If you just stop there. If you just stop there. But yeah, sorry, I feel like I should have made that full screen somehow, but yeah, so that's the piece at the festival, the Gwyl y Ferch festival. And then lastly, I was going to kind of finish with just some new work that I've been thinking of. So this is it's a really short clip, there's no sound on it either. So I think I'll just play it first so you can see. But it's basically I was thinking a lot about COVID and how kind of I feel like I've renewed kind of who I am since COVID, and like our identities have changed like as a whole. And yeah, so it's basically a YouTube video of a sonogram of like a baby sonogram, and I thought about that in relation to like the stages of the moon as well. So like the new moon and the different stages the moon go in, which is in relation to renewing ourselves and renewing like life since COVID in a way. And also I've been also thinking about like imposter syndrome quite a lot. So I was thinking about doing some clips of like smiling, or people smiling until they can't smile, or until it kind of hurts to smile. But yeah, so that's basically it. Yeah.
Great, diolch yn fawr iawn, Manon. Thank you. Really, really interesting. Thank you. I'm sure there are some questions and comments. So if anybody does have any, please do feel free to say it out loud or put it in the chat. Os ydych chi eisiau gofyn rhywbeth neu eisiau deud rhywbeth, please sgwnnwch yn y chat neu dudwch rhywbeth. Ond yeah, hynod o ddifyr, Manon, really interesting. One of the things I was going to ask is, you said you'd done a residency a couple of years ago. Where was that then? Just out of interest.
Yeah, so it was in G39 in
CARN. Looking at the space, I was like, I recognise that space.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a good space. So I don't actually have a studio, so it was really nice to like have a studio and be able to play around with stuff in that space. But yeah, that was, I think it was the Unite project they do with emerging artists and stuff. But it's really worth doing as well if anyone wants to apply for that, because it's so it's really good experience, and like just a way to chat to other artists and meet people and make work. It's really good.
Yeah. And they're a really good group to work with down there as well in G39. They're really supportive. You worked with them as well in Ffion, so yeah. I don't know if anybody does have any questions.
I was just going to ask about on your installation, you were using that there as well. Video projecting where next on the fabric. Is that material come back often? So you work on that?
Sorry, Renee, we're having no problems understanding it. Can you repeat that again, please? I think she might have gone. She'll come back. Sarah says, as an insomniac myself, I loved it. It was really interesting. And the other thing I was going to ask is, you said about you use a lot of YouTube clips in your work, and I presume that it tends to either, I don't know, I'm presuming, does it either come from just finding things that you like and you've got an interest in, or is there a method as you're searching for it, depending on what you're working on?
I was thinking about that actually, but I think it's more of like association sort of thing. So I suppose like if I start with something, I'll think about maybe like it's sort of like a tongue-in-cheek association. Like say if I started with the image of like a mouth or something, maybe I'd have like someone chewing then, or like I don't know, something that would associate with the mouth, I guess. But yeah, I guess it's almost sort of like an intuitive process, maybe. But it is strange because I think sometimes it feels odd doing it because you're just like, I don't know why I'm kind of deciding this, but it makes sense in a way. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see if there's different, because obviously people got different methods and different reasons why they choose things. But yeah, Renee, do you want to try your question again?
Yeah, I keep getting booted out. I've got an unstable connection. No, I was just asking about fabric. It seems as if you go back to fabric in some of your other work, and is that a conscious choice? And is that material changing for different reasons, or does it have a constant behind it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure actually. I think fabric is just really fun to use in general, and it's quite versatile. Like obviously you can print onto it, you can project onto it, like you can draw onto it and move it. But I think I have always maybe consciously used it. And paper as well. I always use paper. I think also it's just really easy to access as well, which is another thing. But yeah, I suppose I think I do use it consciously, to be honest.
Thanks.
And you've obviously played with different experiments with it because of the way you've displayed things in the past, and with this one as well, because of you've done it, draping over some stands, only you've projected onto it, and with this one you've created a bed in a sense, haven't we? So yeah. That's what you've done a lot.
Could I ask a question to Manon? You mentioned at 4 o'clock in the morning that you're still awake and somewhere between, well, not asleep, not awake, and I think you said the edge of madness. And I just wondered if there were any artists that you kind of feel you can associate with or admire in a particular way, or find interesting, maybe connecting to your work, or maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. Conceptually, not really, to be honest. But I think any sort of film artist I really like, just because I think it's kind of it really it just visualizes that, I think, quite well, that kind of inside look into the mind. So I think, yeah, conceptually no, but I do like video artists mostly in terms of like the medium, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think it's just also because it's something that it happens a lot to me. It's just something that I think about a lot naturally. So yeah, it's almost like one of those, I have to make work about it because it's what I'm thinking about the most.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cool. I don't know if anybody's got any other questions or comments. I'm not sure if Renee is still about, actually, before we go into it.
I am. I'm here. I just thought I'd not.
Okay, which is like
everything... panic. No, don't panic. Sorry.
All right. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Manon. We'll leave it there. If anybody does have any further questions or wants to ask something later on, we can do that after everybody else has talked. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you
for now. Right. So yeah, we'll move on to Renee then.
Okay.
So Renee's got a piece called Girl Power, but she's also done some other prints. But I'll let you talk about that, Renee. Okay. Diolch yn fawr.
Where are we at? Oh, lovely. It's disappeared, Manon.
Oh. Do you want me to show it in this end?
All right, so hold on. How do I go back? See, this is why I was worried.
Fine, it's okay.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to.
Okay, that's not a problem. That's no problem. Bear with me. You can talk and I'll get it up for you now.
Okay, so for the exhibition, I was looking at to push the boundaries of using letterpress. And a lot of my work tends to have text in it. Even if I'm painting, I often will paint letters or words or lyrics or poetry as a base to respond to. And I would say I'm primarily a printer and a drawer, and I like to respond to marks. And with the Girl Power, I was looking at pieces of letterpress blocks that I could push the boundary and turn them into art. It's, you know, it's a what we would probably say a quite antiquated process now. We, you know, even though it's had a bit of a revival, letterpress has gone to the side because of the digital age of being able to produce text much more quickly. But there was a real art to it, and a lot of very set rules when it came to letterpress. So I know some of that, and I wanted to kind of push the boundaries a little bit and put some, I suppose, layers of meaning to the work. You look at the Girl Power and you probably just think about the words, or you just think it's a poster. But for me, it was about choosing the colors. It was about lining it in the middle, as if we were all joining together, that there was a process there, that we're coming to a line and meeting and having some sense of our commonalities. I was also playing with the word girl and girl power because of labels that have either positive or negative connotations, and looking at girl power and kind of seeing it as an oxymoron. I'm a former English teacher, so I suppose that's another reason why I play with text and words. But with the Girl Power, I was also trying to think of ways in which you know, women can women get, because it's a women's festival, there are often labels associated with the gender, and a girl not having traditionally power. And how can we take that back, and how can we take back some of the ways in which words associated with us can have new meaning in a positive way. And so just behind that particular piece, I was playing around with a lot of that. I mean, posters also have political, traditionally have political, history behind them too. So I wanted it to kind of look like a poster as well. Manon, do you want to go on to the not the next one, but yeah, that one, thanks. Go down to, yeah. So these are a couple of the posters. So they're about A4 size. And another thing I do with my work is with the printing, I'm constantly responding to what's happening on the page. So I'll do a few prints and then I'm like, okay, I want to change this now. Because I'm thinking a lot whilst I'm actually processing. You do something and you pull a print and you like something that's happening, or you experiment a little bit and something else happens. And so you want to move, or I like to move into a new direction and consider what's happening and make decisions. And I'm constantly having a dialogue with the work and what the possibilities, what new possibilities I can do with the parameters I might have set for myself. Can we go on to the next slide, please, Menna? Menna, sorry. So this is one of the versions that is in the Gwyl y Ferch exhibition. It's one of the posters. It was also used for the brochure, the front of the brochure that they were using. And the main thing going on with this piece is that all of these letterpress blocks are called orphans. So they're not part of a full set of letterpress. And I was kind of playing with the idea of women come from different cultures, different backgrounds, people who are big, people who are small, people who are average, let me say average. We get labeled and put into all these different, I suppose, ways of identifying ourselves externally, and we then internalize those. So I thought if I brought together all these orphans that have scars on them, because that's what happens to the wooden blocks. These are all wooden blocks. That's what happens, is they get dropped and they get a scar, or they have a history of layers of things happening to them. And so that's kind of what this piece here is about, bringing together all those disparate things, and making a whole and coming together and actually becoming uniform. And that's what women can do. We've got that power of, yes, we've all got our different lives and we've got our different experiences, but when we come together, we can say something, and we can be something. Individually, there's not much each one of these blocks will be on their own. But when we come together, then something else happens, something magical can happen. And so that was the other thing that I wanted to talk about, wanted to kind of explore in this piece, because that's what Gwyl y Ferch is about. It's a festival coming together, all of us doing our own thing, and looking completely different. But when we come together, it seems as if it was all meant to be in the first place. I don't know if that makes much sense, but that was my intention behind it. And the one thing I did, one of the things I struggled with was the Gwyl, because it's supposed to have a toe, what's it called, toe bach at the top for the W. And so I didn't have a block with that. So that's me using the flower to kind of flick across the top, to kind of give a representation of the toe bach. Next slide, please. Thanks, Menna. So then I thought I'd give a little bit of what it looks like in the process is, I've got on the right-hand side, you'll see it as it is in the chase. And then the bottom picture there is showing it with the image mirrored. So when you're working with blocks, you're always working from the opposite. So you're reading it backwards. You have to set it up backwards. So you're constantly struggling with that as well, which is it's actually quite interesting to have to work in a different perspective, because it sometimes put a different perspective on the way that you view things as well. If we go down about 2, I think if we keep going, next one, circle. So this is, oh yeah, back. So I just thought I'd show this, is that you can kind of see in here that these don't fit together easily. And, often people, when they try to work together in big groups, they don't always work together easily. You have to find ways to make them work. And so these little pieces of wood and pieces of metal in between each of these, some of them are butted up right against the next letterpress, but then others have to be fitted. There has to be something placed in them. We put these spacers in to stop them from rocking, and lock the whole thing up so that you can get a nice print out of it. Next print. Oh, sorry, next slide, please. So this is a piece that I created in 2020. I think it was January 2020. And I put this into Gwyl y Ferch. And it is a American style letter mailbox. And the letter itself that's kind of fanned out is made up of maps of, because I explore a lot about identity, is the maps of my family having traveled across America and where they settled. And then inside of it is the last letter that I ever received from my grandmother. And there's some prints in there of the area in which she used to live. And she and her sisters used to send letters to me here in the UK. And I just found it really empowering. and that's what it's called, Empowered Words. And the letterbox itself has the copies of the letters, what do you call it, layered inside as well. So my grandmother and her two sisters, once my grandmother's site started going, one of her sisters started writing to me, her site started going, and then the next sister started writing to me, so that she would relay the words, but the other sister would write them. And then when the last sister lost her eyesight, it was her neighbor that was dictating the letters, and that lady was writing those letters to me. So. And then I think I've got one more. I can't remember how many I've put in there. Oh, so yeah, so the next one is, the next slide is, these are a couple of pieces that I entered into the Orlemont biannual exhibition. And again, it's just playing with the idea of how can words and text become art and the ideas behind them. And I layered up a print quite a bit with different text, and then I ripped it in half, and well, I ripped a section off the middle, and then printed not white, but just printed without ink, the word unencumbered, because I feel that we often are encumbered with so much, a lot of baggage. And, how do we get back to being unencumbered, or at least less burdened by what's going on in the world? So that's what that piece is. And then the DM one is out of identity, and how there are issues, because I do work in education, and young people are struggling with social media, and you hear about people being trolled, and DM messages that can be quite abusive. And we forget that social media is just another persona of what might be several personas that we have as we go through our daily lives. And people misunderstand us and think that just that one side of us is who we are. So that's why that's the creation of that one. Don't misunderstand me. And then the last piece, I have played around with tea bags there. So this one's for climate. And I have created a teacup with tea bags, and I have filled it with resin, and then found, as I'm walking, because I walk to school sometimes, or out walking the dog, I'd see things on the ground. Some of the things I would actually pick up and actually put them in there. These are things that are washed into our waterways all the time. And some of the things are representations, like there's a little sponge there. It was really grotty. I wasn't going to pick that one up. I'm sorry. But I had a small bit of sponge, so I cut that and put that in. But, straws, netting from our, our fruit, it's all made of plastic, pens. There's a couple of pieces from the LFT test that we have to test a couple of times a week. And so if you think that there's approximately 1,400 pupils and up towards 200 staff members, and they're doing that twice a week. That's a lot of plastic, And then times that by all the schools and all the institutions around the UK and probably other countries as well. So that's adding up. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Renee. Diolch. I'll stop sharing for a minute then. Leo. But we can always go back to the slides if needs be. Again, really interesting, because I've been looking at the work since we've been installing it, obviously, but I didn't realize there was so much meaning behind it, and it's all the careful consideration behind everything that we do with regards to the printing, and there's always another layer about your work.
Yeah, I do tend to work with layers of meaning, but I also believe that the piece has got to just look and speak to somebody. They don't need to know the meaning. You know, that's really, that's a selfish enjoyment on my part of, you know, going into my work and enjoying it. That's, you know, if other people see that, that's great. But if they don't, that's not really what they need to. So I think Jasper Johns often says this, or he's quoted as often quoted as saying this, is that people bring their own meaning to the work, and they should get out of the work what they wish to get out of it. You know, I've had my enjoyment in creating it, and my consideration is for me more than anything else.
Yeah, and that comes across as well, I think, because you can see how much fun you've had, especially with these prints that you've made so many of them, if nothing else. Thanks. Does everybody have any questions or comments they'd like to share?
I'd just like to say that I really liked your involvement in the process. That was really interesting, because I often try to describe how my process actually influences the next thing I do, and you described it really well there, and I could relate to that. And I also think that what you were just saying, I very much like the fact that you put work out there and you don't know how people are going to take it. I do quite like that. I've had such interesting feedback from things that I've put out that I have quite a different idea about, and people come back to me. But yeah, that's a really interesting thing that goes on. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's kind of like giving, you know, you've created this, given it birth, you're sending it out there, and then somebody says something else about it, you go, oh wow, I never thought of that. But yes, it's relevant. That's good.
Thank you, Wanda.
I just wanted to say the piece with the orphans. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
I just thought it was really visually beautiful, but once you sort of explained the concept behind it, it sort of became really powerful to me. And also, I love the physicality of the blocks, the actual blocks that you use. They're so sculptural. Have you ever sort of, obviously you do sculpture with your the tea bag thing, but have you ever thought of considering sort of merging the blocks in with a sort of sculpture?
If I did, it would have to be more of an installation. Thing.
Uh-oh.
Oh, we lost you, Renee.
Oh, sorry.
Why not do the camera on, love? Maybe that'll help. No. Oh dear. Oh dear. I think Renee's having some major problems.
Yeah.
No.
Me?
Just about, but not really.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay, I think she's left and she'll have to come back. But yeah, so in the meantime, if anybody do have any more questions or comments about Renee's work, then maybe put them in the chat or ask them at the end, and we'll just wait to see what happens with Renee. But in the meantime, we'll go to our next speaker. We'll go to our next speaker, Simone Williams, who's got a photograph, a digital image in the exhibition called Ffion. I can't say it again.
I know. Ephemerality is a tough one. I had to Google it over and over and over for the woman to say it to get it.
There we go. I'll let Simone say it because I'm embarrassed myself again.
Ephemerality.
So again, Simone dan y waith ffotograffiaeth yn y sioe a meddwl hi ddweud mwy amdano fo. Diolch.
Diolch, Menna. I just say how nice is it to see people's faces, not masked up. Right, okay, so share screen. Beginning. Just give it a second. I hope. There we go. Can everybody see that? Yeah? Cool. Okay, so this is my piece Ephemerality, which is in the Gwyl no, Gwyl y Ferch, sorry. Right, okay, next slide. So this piece has come from a project that I'm doing at the moment called the River Project North Wales, which I've been running for going on 2 years now. It's quite a big project, but I'll just try and be brief because we've only got sort of 10 minutes. So the inspiration for the River Project North Wales came from some previous work called Plastic Planet, where I did a series of beach cleans over a year around Anglesey, and just kept everything in a similar sort of way to you, Renee, when you were with the tea bag sculpture. So I just kind of did a beach clean every week, and just kept everything, and then sort of displayed it in an aesthetically pleasing way to sort of challenge the viewer. So that's kind of where the inspiration came from. It looked quite beautiful on the plinths. It was all uplit, but obviously, as you can see, it wasn't beautiful at all. Pretty disgusting. So when I was doing the masters last year, we were given a practice through engagement module to do, where we had to engage with a community, and then obviously COVID hit, so we had to sort of rethink it. So my initial idea was to sort of, because I'm always doing beach cleans, was to sort of go back and think, right, how is a lot of this stuff getting on the beach? And a lot of it is from rivers. So yeah, I focused on the Afon Ogwen, in the Ogwen Valley, and obviously during lockdown I couldn't get there. Well, it wasn't really allowed, you know, it wasn't really essential to sort of go there. So I had to sort of rethink it, and what I did was I collected water from the river and brought it to my studio to sort of work out a way that I could sort of play with the river without being at the river. So that's what I did. So I originally started casting sort of ice with single-use plastic molds. So this is a bottle which I placed, and I just I was sort of going there and leaving ice objects, in the hope that someone would sort of see it and engage with it. But obviously lockdown changed a lot of that. So yeah, here's just some sort of close-ups of the ice, the bottles. This is a ice bottle, and then I just sort of started playing around with different molds, and also it didn't sort of sit right that I was using all these, even though I was obviously recycling them. You know, it didn't feel right that I was using all these sort of molds to sort of highlight an issue that, you know, I was adding to. So anyway, I eventually sort of settled on this form, which was a balloon. So I put the water into the balloon from the river. Yeah, and I just thought this was quite a beautiful form. So I played around with this quite a lot. And it was quite funny, actually, in lockdown, I had a freezer full of these forms, and obviously we had to do a big food shop because of lockdown, so I had to just let them all sit out in the sun and melt. I obviously documented it, but my tutor thought it was quite funny, actually, that I'd had to destroy my work for food. So yeah, here's another one of the forms. And obviously everyone was unique, so that's what I loved. And I also there's my notes. So yeah, I like to work in a site-specific nature, but obviously that was taken away from me with lockdown and not being able to go anywhere. But I do like to use materials that are sort of leave no trace, like light, water, ice. I'm really conscious of the materials that I use. Obviously, I'm trying to highlight environmental issues, so it didn't really make sense to be using materials that were adding to the problem. So that's quite important to me as an artist. So yeah, eventually I was allowed out. So back to the Ogwen, and I just started documenting the objects being released back into the river with a sort of super zoom lens, so I could let them go and just sort of follow them down the river, which was quite fun, and I got some funny looks. But and I was lucky enough in lockdown to get these in the climate emergency exhibition in Mid Wales. Obviously I couldn't make it because of the pandemic, but yeah, so these pieces were actually there. And yeah, I was just sort of focusing on the river, the movement of the river. Yeah. These pieces I added text to, just sort of in relation to the climate crisis. More ice in the river. And then this object here I thought I would talk about, because I think Mana's going to show a short clip at the end of how this sort of became involved with the river project. I'm quite interested in obviously site specific and making objects. I'm always have to make objects. I'm obsessed with making objects, but sort of merging the objects in the landscape, I'm quite interested, and how taking it out of the gallery context can change the sculpture. So this piece was, I made a small maquette out using a balloon, and I guess that kind of subconsciously came from the ice, but I didn't think of it at the time. So this piece I used a yoga ball. It was quite important to me that I didn't buy it, so I got it off free cycle. This gentleman was giving it away, so I went and collected it. But once I'd sort of made the object and I put it in the sink in my studio, and I happened to have this ice picture on the wall, and I just looked at it and I thought, how the hell didn't I see that before? You know, it's literally, I've just made a giant ice ball, and I just, these were two different modules in uni, and I just didn't see it. It was just like, what? So obviously I was subconsciously creating a giant ice ball and I didn't even know. So yeah, this piece, we had a lockdown exhibition in Gallery Carnarvon, where the space was just free, and we were getting ready for our degree show, and we hadn't even been in our studios. We weren't even allowed in the college. So Bex let us use this space to sort of, in a way, sort of try and work out our degree show. And at this point, we didn't even know if it was going to happen or not. So yeah, that's what that image is. And then I started sort of merging the two, the projection. I love using projection, so I got some images of the river and started taking some video of the river with an underwater camera. So started documenting the Ogwen from source to sea. So going up into the mountains and trying to find the source of the river, if you like. So yeah, this was the sort of final installation, merging the two sort of projects. This is footage from inside the Avon Ogwen projected onto the sphere, and this was the degree show. So that's that. And then obviously I showed ephemerality in the degree show as well. So it all kind of linked together really nicely. Yeah, and that is the piece that is in the show. Sorry, I feel like I've gone through that really fast. but yeah, I think that's all my slides actually. So yeah, has anybody got any questions? I think Manna's got a couple of video clips to show. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want me to show them in the order you sent them to me?
To be honest with you, yeah, because obviously I was going to show them myself, but it wouldn't let me, so I've just kind of sent them. So yeah, don't worry too much, Manna. Thank you. Deal. So I'll stop sharing. Yeah. Stop share. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Some of them aren't doing really.
Come on, there we go. Thank you.
Getting these up, sorry, bear with me.
Okay. I couldn't do it, so my laptop was just like, no.
But yeah. Is there a reason why you chose that Ogwen River? Just out of interest.
I mean, I do tend to walk there a lot. It's just, yeah, it just so happened to be that. I mean, I sort of made the objects and then just sort of went out, but obviously I had to get a freezer, you know, those little, like for festivals, like a little diddy freezer for your car. So I had to sort of travel with that, with the objects in it. And I guess the Ogwen was just there really. Obviously it's local. So yeah.
Have you, oh, I was just going to ask, have you studied much of David Nash?
Yes,
yeah, David.
I have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the boulder actually. Yeah. I guess this is my version of the boulder, right?
Started seeing, I was like, oh my gosh, that reminds me of the boulder.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I love the boulder story. Yeah. And I guess that kind of highlighted to me how my work's as much about the process, probably even more so about the process than the final piece. And that, you know, what's that gentleman called who pushed the ice block around the streets of Mexico? Oh, I can't believe I've forgotten his name. He's an artist too. He basically pushed a block of ice around the streets of Mexico, and in the end there was nothing, obviously, and that's okay, you know, and that's kind of taught me to deal with that as an artist, that, you know, there doesn't have to be a final piece, you know, and that's fine. So yeah.
I've got these stuff for
his name there.
Is it Francis Alice?
Yes, that's it. Yeah, Francis Alice. Yeah,
Alice.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll share these videos now, just quickly so that
thank
people
you.
can see them. Oh, it's disappeared. Oh, that's not playing properly. Bear with me. Here we go. It's not.
Sorry, Mans.
That won't go any quicker.
Yeah, it's jumping a bit, but you get the sort of idea. So I wanted to basically melt that back into the rivers in the same sort of way as the ice. So obviously it was really important to me that it wasn't toxic in any way. So I used tapioca starch as a glue. I know PVA glue is supposed to be non-toxic, but it just didn't sit comfortably putting that in the river. So tapioca starch, acid-free paper, and yeah, so we just documented it being consumed by the river. And this is just a layering up of the sphere and Trevan. I got quite a lot of footage from this river, which is just above Trevan in the Ogwen Valley. And that is the installation in the degree show. Gives you just an idea of what I'm talking about. sorry, it's a bit jumpy. I'm not sure why, but it's just
I think it might be the best version to do.
yeah. Just these are just clips of me documenting the river, basically. But yeah, don't worry too much about that.
I'll just do the last
Thanks,
one
Lance.
just because I have it.
Thank
Right,
you.
so-
Yeah, you get the idea. They're a bit jumpy for some reason, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, as I said, I think that might be because we're using Zoom and it's not.
Yeah,
I might be
technology.
exactly.
Thank you.
Just about it.
Diolch.
Thank you. I don't know if anybody's got any questions for Simone or any comments.
I was going to say, I really like the idea of sort of preserving water, like that concept of being environmentally friendly and preserving water and giving it back to the river.
Yeah,
that's a really nice idea. And also, like, it's quite interesting how it's sort of like a ritual, like you were, using water and putting it back.
Yeah,
really interesting as well. But
thank you.
Yeah, I really liked it.
Thanks.
What do you think you'll be doing next, Simone? How do you think it'll develop?
Well, I obviously now the whole engaging with the public is, we're sort of, that's opening up again. So I would sort of like to do some sort of project along the Ogwen with a community. Yeah, I mean, I'm teaming up with somebody from One Global Ocean, who he's actually raising money to sort of educate kids about plastics in the environment. He's just done a load of beach cleans. So I think we're going to sort of team up, do some river cleans. So yeah, it's quite, I mean, it's quite a big project, but it's in its early days, really. So getting some funding maybe from the Arts Council would be a good way to go. So if anyone's got any links or suggestions, I'd appreciate that. So yeah, it's in its early days, really.
Lovely stuff. Lovely stuff.
Thank you.
I'll send you some links afterwards. But Wanda herself said that she really likes how your ideas flow, no pun intended. And Jane says beautiful imagery, and Sarah says wonderful images and stretching what photography can offer. That's very true.
Thank you.
Because I think it comes off very much like what Renee was saying about her work, that you like to play with how far you can push things.
Yeah.
And that's quite obvious. Car, you have a question, my dear.
Okay. You okay?
Sorry about putting my hand up. I'm not very good at jumping in doing things, so find that easier. I just want to say I absolutely love your work and all the beautiful layers of kind of meaning that you've got within them. And I was just really interested in the piece that you put into the exhibition, which looks like it's kind of like an ice mold layered with maybe a feather and a leaf. I was just I was just interested to hear a bit more about that, if you don't mind.
The leaf is funny actually, because I was just busy, photographing it, and this leaf was on it, and I got so annoyed I actually threw a rock at it to get it off, because I was like, you're ruining my image, get off, and then when I was looking back through the sort of reel of images, I thought, oh God, that's beautiful, and I've ended up, that's obviously the piece that's ended up in the exhibition. So yeah, there is a story behind that, and it's I was quite annoyed, but it kind of makes the image, doesn't it, really? And obviously it was sort of autumn, and the leaves are sort of, it's like the transient sort of the seasons, and thank you.
I'd love to have seen a video of you throwing the rock at it. That would have
been behind this tranquil image there was a bit of rage.
I love that image. Yeah. Thank you, Kat. Yeah, do you know what's a bit random about that picture is when we looked at it first, we thought maybe it was a girl's head because of its
Oh yeah.
way, just because of the leaf, like just as an initial. So we were like, oh, no, it's not. It's not a girl's head.
Yeah, it's a little hitchhiking leaf.
Does anybody have any further questions or comments they'd like to make at this point? We'll go on to the last but not least, Wanda. So Wanda was supposed to do it last week. Diolch yn fawr, Simone, for now.
Diolch pawb, thank you. Thanks, man.
So Wanda was supposed to do it last week, but she was very, very ill and had no voice, bless her. So we have got to this week, but she still has a bit of a fragile voice, as you've heard. So diolch yn fawr iawn, Wanda. Thank you for joining us. Much appreciated. So Wanda has a monoprint in the exhibition, and I'll let her talk more about it. Diolch.
Thank you. I'll try and share my screen. We have liftoff. Can you all see that? No. I'll give it another go. Share screen. No, it won't go into my
There we go.
Oh, got it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Oh, zip down. So this is me. That's how I describe myself principally as artist printmaker. And the images I put in for the show were monotypes. I mostly use monotypes, collagraphs and dry points, all without nasty chemicals, all on acid-free paper, mostly cotton rag, and most of the plates, virtually all the plates I use, I reuse again and again. So these are made on a sheet that I've just constantly reused, and my collagraphs I use on cardboard plates, which I just use cereal packets, all sorts of things. But the reason I like monotype is I really like the gestural aspect of it, that you can, I roll out the ink onto the plate and then work into it. And so this came from a lovely guy we get our wood from. And we were talking about how we don't like computers, and he said, oh yeah, we live in the time of bears and wolves. I don't know if that's a Welsh saying, but I just think it's a wonderful saying. So it's become our favourite saying in the house. Or sometimes we say we live in the time of wolves and bears, turn it around. So this other monotype I did at the same time. It's a theme I've worked through before. This is a much earlier collagraph that used that same idea. And I often have recurring themes that might look pretty and alluring, but I very often have another message going on behind the scenes. I often use personal narrative as well. So narrative is a strong part of what I do. This personal narrative, this picture recurs several times in my work. If you've seen in my installation or anything, it's the picture was above my parents' bed, so that's the view I used to have of it. So it often reappears. So I'd say I was most of my work deals with narrative, but it's actually a subversive narrative. This is highly influenced by Kirchner, who has a very similar image of a bareback rider. But I did this when I was feeling super cross with Trump, and this is a good old Bojo here, who's working who really. Yeah, he seems like a joker, but it's not really funny, is it? So this is another sent him back, one of my subversive pieces of work. And I am half Polish, so there's a strong back thing about Poles using posters as a subversion when they couldn't actually when they were behind the Iron Curtain, and they couldn't actually say how they felt. They actually used posters as a way of metaphor of saying how they really felt. And of course, lots of artists love the circus, which is one of my recurring themes. Matisse's book is called Jazz, but it was initially called Circus. He uses a lot of circus imagery. Here we are. This is another one of my circus monotypes, but actually it was all about what do you call it when you're I'm trying to think what we call it. The facial recognition, when they were making a lot of noise about facial recognition and how we didn't know what was going on. So this is all around. I sometimes use writing in my work, but very often take it from newspapers, things that are being said in the press. So there are lots of different quotes from newspapers about what was going on with facial recognition at the time. I've also I've done installations at my very first big installation was at Plas Bodfa 3 years ago when she first did her very first show, and this became a narrative piece that I did in collaboration with my husband, and it was very much a personal thing that I was exploring about my mum and about the chaos she left behind when she died and things we found out about what had been going on that we had no idea about until she died. So this was a piece that again was a narrative, but it was my personal narrative. And below that, like you, I did my MA during this wonderful time of COVID. So I was going to give up the MA at one stage and wait till it was all over, because I kept saying I didn't want to just show all my stuff on screen. And if it was going that way, you know, I'd give it a break for a year or so. And it was suggested that I should think about a site-specific installation. So that's actually what I did. I did a site-specific installation at Plas Bodfa that only very few people came to see, but at least it was there physically. But it was, what I tried to do is build up a sanctuary. It's got I used several rooms. I won't show it here, but there were several parts to it. It went from a big public space into a smaller, more personal space. But it was the idea, which grew with COVID, of course, about trying to find sanctuary for people, trying to offer sanctuary. Then talking about process is absolutely key to what I do. And just like Renee was saying earlier, it's often by producing the work that, especially with printmaking, that you take different routes, try different things out, experiment, and that's what I really enjoy. And that internal dialogue that I have all the time about what am I trying to achieve here? How could I push this further? Can I use this print in a different way to achieve a different result? There are often things that are going on in my head, which I think affects the outcome. So, and all part of that process is I do keep loads and loads of sketchbooks. I've just got masses of sketchbooks, and I use sketchbooks for trying out ideas, for writing things down if I hear anything that I want to include in my work. So all these things feed back into the final results. And so I think you'll see a lot of these things have come up again and again and again. And what evolved was, because I was frustrated about how I was showing my work on screen to the tutors, I started doing filmmaking. So I'm very much a novice still. One of my pieces was shown at the film festival, but I dabbled in animation, and I was very influenced by the work of William Kentridge, who I'd never heard of before, but he actually does a lot of charcoal work and then rubs into work and then overlays it. and I really enjoy it. It's going to definitely be part of my ongoing practice. And as well as that, I also like being involved in collaborative pieces in a thing. So that's why I loved being part of Plasbodfa, because I loved being involved with all those other artists. So any opportunity. So Utopia's Box, which some of you might know about, is a group. CARN knows very much about it. It's a group that's tried all sorts of things and are developing in all sorts of ways. And lovely Sarah Pagoda has started a surreal festival, which I took part in the first time, and enabled me to carry out my idea that I really believe very much in the democracy of art. That's why I like printmaking. I often give away my prints because I think it's about stepping outside that gallery space, making it accessible to everybody. So as part of the first festival, where I'm wearing a lovely hat, as part of the first festival, I had my gallery without walls, where I made a set of prints which I gave away to people. And what was interesting was what you got back, you know, not knowing how people are going to receive your work, but what people actually said. People who weren't the normal art critiques, people who wouldn't normally go to galleries, they would actually stop and have a chat to you about the piece of work you'd given them. And then the following year, this summer, I carried on that idea about a gallery outside, and took up with the idea of having something small, because we were talking about the idea of having things that were really small, part of the Utopia's Bach idea. And I made a little gallery inside a box. So it's just an extension of my ideas about how I think we could think about galleries in a different way. And currently what I'm doing as well is I'm using sayings. So if you have any lovely Welsh sayings that connect to the land, it's a part of the land project I'm involved with. The take I'm having is that I'm trying to connect sayings with the actual place, because I think it actually gives you an idea of the history of the place. So lots of people on Anglesey have quoted this particular piece to me: if Maltrais cob breaks, my mother will drown. My mother being Mon, the island of Anglesey, will drown if the cob breaks. And apparently it's a song. Somebody's found it for me in the archives in the Welsh Museum. It was actually originally a song. So that's what I'm exploring at the moment, that link of language, the Welsh language, to the country itself and the places we live in. So any advice you can give me, I'd be grateful for. And what I'm also doing at the moment, as part of my next thing with Plasbodfa, I'm hoping to invite people in, a bit like the artist is present, what's her name, Marina Abramovich. I'm inviting people to come and actually meet me and have a conversation, though, not to sit and look at me and wonder, but actually have a conversation with me. So I've been making a series of what I call conversation starters, which I will then have available at Plasbodfa for people to actually start talking to me about whatever interests them. So that's me.
Lovely, thank you very much on those. Again, it's so interesting to hear more about the behind the works and stuff like that, and get a bit different, get to know a bit more about you as well. Because even though I've known you for years, I don't think I've managed to get to know much more about your work and stuff behind what we see in the gallery. So yeah, thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Oh, it was a bit of a whistle stop.
Yeah, I really like the work. I was thinking it looks quite a lot like fairy tales, like the imagery. And I thought, like, maybe you could look at, because you were talking about you wanted to look more into storytelling and things like that. So I thought you could look at Mabinogion maybe. There's a lot of interesting stories in that. And you
Yeah,
could
I have actually, when we first came back to live in Wales, because we've been back living here for the last 7 years, all my work started around that. And
yeah,
I have to left it because I think there's so many people doing wonderful stuff around it,
yeah,
But yes, you're right. But at the moment, it's that connection with the land. That's what I'm really interested in, and
yeah.
finding out those sayings. So yeah, but thank you.
Yeah, no, you can, because you can really see the influence, I think, from storytelling and fairy tales and things. So I think, yeah, that's really interesting.
Thank you.
Could I just? I just wondered. I'm pretty sure you'll have come across The Prophet by Khalil Gibran.
Yes, I have the copy.
Yeah.
I had it read at my wedding.
Right, you got the T-shirt and the book.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I was just fascinated with the way in which you circumvented the gallery space and looked at different ways. I mean, even Simone working in the environment as well, and the fact that you give your art away sometimes, because that brings into question the value of a piece of art, because materially there's usually not a great deal of value in I mean, I work in ceramics, so materially clay's cheap, fairly cheap, and the processes and the materials, but then you kind of put a value on it. If you give it away, do you think that undermines the professional dimension of an artist? I mean, I've got a lot of work. I wouldn't I kind of stick a price on it. I've got a loft full, I mean, there were.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, but I think being a printmaker, and I don't give away huge works. They're usually quite small, but it's that dialogue. I want to have that connection, and Keith Haring he tried very hard to democratize art and make it as cheap and as affordable as possible. And I think what's her name, Julia Upmeyer at Plasbodva, she's actually started this multiples idea as a way of actually making art affordable and accessible. And I think that's really more what I'm about. But it's that doing these specific activities, like the 2 events I took part in, giving away things, then that was something to do. It's more like a performance, really, because what happened was you end up having a lot of dialogue with people about what art is and what am I doing by democratizing art, and what am I doing by giving it away. And that's really good, because it opens up that dialogue with people who normally wouldn't bother talking about art. So that's my main consideration.
I agree with that, because I do have pieces where I have put a high value on, if I've put them into an exhibition, but I also have pieces where I'm quite happy to sell them or put a price on them that makes them accessible, because I want them to enjoy it. And I feel as if, I think what you've raised is a really, really good point, because it's an area which I have thought about myself. And a lot of my pieces now, depending on the piece, I actually don't sell for a lot of money. And I want them to be accessible. I want people to enjoy them. Maybe it's different as a printer because you can do multiples. I think Wanda's right. Maybe our perspective as printers, that changes the way, the dynamics of our relationship with the pieces. Maybe they are a little bit more ephemeral. I don't know, but I think what you've raised is a really good point. It's an area that some people have very strong opinions about. I think
it's really hard if you're trying to make a living, and I really do understand that is really, really difficult. But how many artists can really make a living from their art? You have to be way up there, don't you, to actually make a real proper living. So we're all on the edges of that, aren't we, really? And I reckon anybody who calls themselves an artist, they're making a living from something else besides their art, aren't they? It might be inclusive part of their living, but it's unfortunately. You
Yeah.
have to put bread on the table, don't you?
Yeah, I think for me as well, a lot of the time there isn't anything physical left when I'm documenting the process. But I did a series of work a few years ago called The Anti-Consumerism, and it was in Gallery Carnarvon, and it was my sort of reaction towards mass consumerism, mass consumption, and it was basically sort of that idea that we do consume too much, and it wasn't for sale, but people wanted to buy it, and it was kind of like, you've kind of missed the point. It's called the anti-consumerism, but so for me, obviously I have my photography that I can sell, but it is kind of about the process and leaving no trace. But obviously trying to make a living out of that is just not happening. So, but that's my choice, my personal choice. So yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your video work.
All right.
And how you found that kind of verging into kind of digital media, because your work is very kind of looks laborious, your drawings very worked into, very crafted, and obviously video, it's data, you can do anything with it, but it doesn't exist. I guess kind of going into a different era of that now, with being able to sell digital artwork through NFTs or whatever. But I wanted to ask about that because when I was doing the selection for the film night, your film was a film that I thought about a lot afterwards, and I didn't expect that at the end to be what it was about. And it was one that I thought about a lot after, and watching it in the cinema, when we were able to all be in the cinema together, and having that sobering moment of being reminded how many people have died from COVID, was really, really powerful, sitting in that audience. And it's not something that I'm going to forget, really, the feeling of that coming up on the screen when we were all together again. But yeah, but kind of, how have you found working in digital media when you're so used to kind of printing?
Yeah. It's really interesting because the lecturers all laughed at me during my MA because I said I hate digital. Constantly said I hate digital, and if you want to look at my work, you have to look at my sketchbooks. But actually I had to embrace it, didn't I? I felt that if I was showing my work, I started getting better at it. If I wanted to show the lecturers my work, I had to show it to them on screen. So I started making little films of everything I did. So that's how it developed, really. But in terms of that particular film you're talking about, it was just I'd been making paintings about it. I'd made several paintings about the same idea, but I thought this actually doesn't do the job. And because you can multi-layer it, can't you? That there was music as part of it. There was a poem at the end that I'd written for it. There was the actual painting that I did as part of it. But I just thought it was a very strong way of telling a narrative. So when you just see a picture, you've just got that picture there, haven't you? And you can spend as much time or as little time as you want in front of a picture. But when you're actually immersed in a film, it's quite a different experience. I'm very much influenced by, I can't remember his name, I love him so much, Bill Viola. The first time I saw one of his images at the Blue Coat, and I just thought, oh, that is so amazing. It was a very small screen of the, everybody will know it if you know Bill Viola, of the two swimmers. And I just thought, that is just so engaging. It's so much more engaging than just a simple picture, because you were transfixed by what was going on. So yes, I've enjoyed it. And I've dabbled, as I say, I've dabbled in animation too, which I've really enjoyed too. So I think it's definitely going to be part of my process still, as an addition to what I do.
You have bingo. You're in all three. You have a poem in the anthology, film in the film night, and a piece in the exhibition.
The only person
that's me.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you, ladies. There's a question. Car's got a hand up again. I don't know if you want to ask it, Car.
Hi, Wanda. It's lovely to listen to you talking about your work. First of all, I just wanted to say I'm absolutely amazed and inspired by how much you actually do and all the different things that you're involved with, and how on earth do you find the time to do it all?
I tell you, it's not a good idea though. You're better to focus on one thing, because at the end of the day, the poor lecturers were just so inundated with it. They just couldn't make me out at all for ages. But actually, the serious point is a lot of it just connects, So it just one thing flows. It's a bit like all of you have been saying. One idea flows to the next idea, to the next idea. So it's all connected, really. Yeah.
And also what I was going to say was that I really admire the fact that you persevered with your degree through the pandemic. I'm doing a degree and I actually took a year out because of the effect that it had on the work. So I really admire you for kind of persevering, and also the fact that you discovered new ways of expressing yourself during the pandemic that you might not have discovered if you hadn't have carried on, like the film. That's really interesting to me, the way that happened.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I would never have done it if it hadn't been for pandemic. So that was one good thing came out of it. Or maybe.
No, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Car. And just to read out the comments that's in the chat, thanks everybody who have. So Jane says, Wanda, I love all your fantastic ideas and the depth of thinking, including the political angles.
Oh,
and Sarah says, so interesting. Thank you about that dialogue. And Jane's also said, Bill Viola is fab. I think we all. Thank you. I'm not going to take up any more time than needs to be, but if anybody's got any more comments or questions, or if we want to go back to Renee, because obviously we lost you earlier. So I don't know if you remember what the question was from Simone earlier.
I do remember, because it was about a sculpture, and what I was going to say is I would do an installation with it, but I wouldn't create a permanent piece of sculpture with it, because so many pieces of font and some of these are 150 years old, and to put them into some form of permanent sculpture would be taking them away from, if you have a full compilation of font, a whole family of them, then you end up, to me, they need to stay together, because they can't be, you can cut new ones, but some of these have been actually hand carved and made, and you would then lose that person's piece of art, because you're right, some of them are pieces of art, somebody's handled it and cut it, and they've got their trace in there as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure if there's any more questions, if anybody's got the strength or the energy left, but I just want to say diolch yn fawr iawn, thank you all very much, and just to remind everyone that the exhibition is on until Sunday, including Sunday for this last weekend, excuse me, and we're open 10 till 3 tomorrow, Friday and Saturday, and 10 till 2 on Sunday. And then there'll be the poetry event that Ffion mentioned at the beginning of the talk between 2 and 3, which is open to everyone. And we will have people that have got poetry work in the anthology presenting some of their work, I believe, Ffion, as well as an opportunity to talk to those people. I don't know if you want to say something more about that, Ffion, before we say goodbye.
Yeah, so thanks everyone. Yeah, we're open until Sunday, like Menna said, and we'll have an afternoon of poetry, poets from who are in the anthology is for sale as well. Yeah, who'll be reading their poems from then, and a couple of new bits and bobs from a few So yeah, it's a new event for us. I'm really excited about it. It'll be nice to bring everyone from the anthology together. And yeah, it'll be a nice event, and it's pay what you feel on the door, donation to charity as well.
Yeah. Okay, well, I won't keep you any longer. Diolch yn fawr iawn, everyone, my voice is going out, catching one. So diolch yn fawr iawn pawb, a diolch am eich amser. Thank you to everyone, especially to you artists. Thank you.
Diolch.
Thank you.
Nos